Good evening, everyone. Happy Monday. I hope you guys had a great day, made the most out of your opportunities. We have to jump straight into this. As you guys know, history is unfolding right in front of us. And the biggest social justice case, the biggest white versus black case in America, probably since I would say Trayvon Martin with George Zimmerman. I think that this case right here, no matter how it goes, is going to end up in a disastrous event for Minnesota. The only thing that I think would spare Minneapolis, Minnesota from being burned to the ground is if Derek Chauvin gets charged of all three charges. As you guys know, he is being charged with second-degree unintentional murder, third-degree murder, and second-degree manslaughter. Now, I think after today's statements, and I've said this in my previous videos, I believe that Derek Chauvin is innocent of murder. Now, after listening to the arguments by the prosecutors, the door is open for manslaughter because what the prosecutors did very well today was they showed the timeline of how long Derek Chauvin had his knee on George Floyd's neck after George Floyd went limp. And you could see this on the video. You could see this on the timeline. They did a good job highlighting this. I took some notes down that we're going to be going over, but the timeline shows that for 4 minutes and 45 seconds, Derek Chauvin had his knee on Floyd's neck. Floyd was responsive at the time, calling out for 4 minutes and 45 seconds. And then at that point, that is when he went limp. And for the next 4 minutes and 44 seconds, George Floyd was silent. So I think that the prosecutors did a good job of highlighting that point and bringing up the fact that there is policy that talks about excessive force. So I think on that front, the prosecuting team did a really good job. And I think that the defense team did an amazing job at bringing up just some cold hard facts, some of which we didn't actually know the clarification of. One of them being that George Floyd popped a speedball, two speedballs before the cops even got there, and he was passing out in his car in the Mercedes before the cops even got there. The defense team says that they're going to bring testimony from the friends that were in the car to prove and testify that George Floyd was taking a mixture of meth and fentanyl at the time, right before the cops came. So overall, I think if this was a heavyweight fight, I think today was a draw when it comes to who gets the upper hand. The prosecutors are going to leverage heavy on the film, on the video, and I think that may be to their detriment because the defense team did a really good job of highlighting. Eric Nelson did a really good job of highlighting that this story is a holistic one, that it is much greater than the 9 minutes and 29 seconds, I believe, that Derek Chauvin had his knee on George Floyd's neck. If you were to just focus on that bit of time, then what you're doing is you're neglecting the totality of the evidence. And if you neglect the totality of the evidence, then your conclusions can easily be skewed because you're not looking at everything in correct context. So with all of that said, I want to lead off with a New York Times article titled "Takeaways from the First Day of the Derek Chauvin Trial." We're going to look at two of these articles from the New York Times. Let me go ahead and make this screen bigger so you guys can read along with me. All right, so takeaways from the first day of the Derek Chauvin trial. So this is fairly newly published 2 hours ago by Bill Wright. We're sitting at 8:34 p.m. on March 29th. All right, so one of the most closely watched court cases in decades got underway on Monday as the murder trial began for Derek Chauvin, the former Minneapolis police officer who was being charged with murder in the death of George Floyd. A long day in court began with the prosecution's opening remarks focusing the jury's attention on the bystander video of Mr. Floyd's death, all 9 minutes and 29 seconds of it. and ended with the testimony of a mixed martial arts fighter who was on the scene and said he believed Mr. Chauvin was killing Mr. Floyd. In between, the defense laid out its theory of the case, vowing to prove over the course of the trial that Mr. Floyd died of a drug overdose and heart condition. Here's what happened. The trial began with opening statements from both sides, laying the groundwork for both teams as they make their case to the jury pool. Prosecuting attorney Jerry W. Blackwell aimed to focus the jurors' attention on the famous video of Mr. Floyd's arrest, which sparked a wave of protests across the country this summer. The video taken by a bystander showed Mr. Chauvin kneeling on Mr. Floyd's neck, where he remained for about 9 minutes and 30 seconds. You can believe your eyes that it's homicide, it's murder, Mr. Blackwell said, adding that the trial was about Derek Chauvin, not the police in general. Defense attorneys for Mr. Chauvin laid out their strategy as well. One that will ask jurors to consider heaps of evidence outside the video itself. Eric Nelson, the lawyer for Mr. Chauvin, said there are more than 50,000 items in evidence and told jurors that the case is clearly more than 9 minutes and 29 seconds. Now, to that point, Eric Nelson, he does a good job of really showing that if you only look at the 9 minutes and 29 seconds, that you are going to come to a wrong conclusion, because there is a sequence of events that happen before, during, and after. So to get the most accurate conclusion, you have to consider all of the details. And there's a thing that some people like to talk about, not a thing, but a word. Okay, a word: nuance. So when I was going over this and I was looking at the videos and I was listening to the opening statements, the word nuance popped in my head. And nuance is just a word that lets people know, it communicates that there are multifaceted, multi-layered, complex ways of looking at things, aka things are not just straightforward. So sometimes the word nuance is used as leverage by one person to explain to another person that, hey, you really don't understand the totality, the complexity of the situation. You lack nuance. So I've seen that used and deployed in many different circumstances. Mainly, I've seen it employed in the social justice circumstance, where you have one person advocating for the reality that there is systemic racism holding people back, and then another person saying, no, it's really not true. And then the person advocating that systemic racism is holding people back deploys the word nuance. You lack nuance if you don't see the reality of systemic racism. Anyways, with that said, defense attorney Eric Nelson brings to the forefront that this case is not as straightforward as the prosecutors want you to believe. All right, the prosecutors believe, as well as the Floyd family, and I quote, "This case is a slam dunk because we know the video is proof. It's all you need." Now, that was from George Floyd's family, and many people really have sat with over the course of the last 10 months, from the point that we've seen this video to now. There is a huge consensus that this is a slam dunk. Oh, we have the video. What else do you need? But what the defense team is showing is that, no, this is not straightforward. No, this is not clear cut. No, this is not just about 9 minutes and 29 seconds. This is about 9 minutes and 29 seconds and up to 50,000 other pieces of evidence that must be incorporated for one to come to a sober-minded, holistic conclusion about what happened. So to that point, I think Eric Nelson did a really good job at establishing that, no, this is not straightforward, Ben Crump. No, this is not straightforward, George Floyd family. No, this is not straightforward, Al Sharpton and social justice warriors. This is not a slam dunk. This is going to be a monster of a fight, because both sides have good points. It's not like one side is over here destroying the other side. All right. So with that said, moving on with the article, the state also The state also made clear another point that Mr. Floyd's exact cause of death will prove to be one of the most crucial points of this trial. In its opening statement, the prosecution, not the defense, as previously reported, said it would call 7 medical experts in addition to the Hennepin County medical examiner, Dr. Andrew Baker, who performed the only autopsy on Mr. Floyd and classified it as a homicide. Witnesses, including a cashier at a gas station across the street, who filmed the encounter, and a 911 dispatcher also described their actions during the time that Mr. Floyd was arrested. My instincts were telling me that something was wrong, said Jenna Scurry, the 911 dispatcher who alerted a supervising sergeant about what was happening, but she was circumspect about what exactly she thought was wrong. She said she thought the officers may have needed reinforcements. Outside the courthouse, the amount of public interest in the trial was laid bare as protesters gathered in a helicopter world overhead. Temporary concrete and metal barricades encircled some of the government buildings downtown, while National Guard members and state police officers stood by. Ben Crump, a lawyer for Mr. Floyd's family, told supporters on Monday that the whole world is watching, and indeed it is. All right, the whole world is watching. Make sure you guys that are in, make sure you guys are dropping comments. If you have any thoughts, comments, concerns, insights, make sure you drop that in the comment section below. And as I get done reading and talking about the points I want to talk about and giving my commentary, I could jump into some of your questions. But as you guys see, um, like I said in the beginning, I really think that both sides did a good job of representing what each side is fighting for. Like I said, the Chauvin defense says that they're going to have testimony by friends that were in the car with George Floyd, and they're going to testify that he was getting high as a kite in the car for fear of being caught with speedball being methamphetamine and fentanyl mixed into one pill, and it's manufactured to look like a Percocet. So the testimony is supposed to bear witness to the fact that George Floyd was getting doped up. He was high as a kite right before the cops came. I think the defense also did a good job at revealing and just stressing and pointing out that George Floyd had a compromised heart. So when you add all of the details, when you add the speedball, when you add atherosclerosis, when you add the effects of the speedball to his heart condition, one can reasonably conclude that it was not a knee to the neck that killed George Floyd, but really it was more of a complication of drugs and a heart problem. With that said, as I previously stated, the prosecutors highlighted the use of force policy, which I want to take a look at because I think this is a great move by the prosecutors. And honestly, when I was watching this for the first time today, that part struck me the most because I looked at the policy and then I thought about the policy and then I looked at the point that the prosecutor was making, Jerry Blackwell, and I could see how somebody could side with that point. And the good thing about this opening statement is it's clear to me that both sides are coming ready to fight. Both sides are coming ready to play. Both sides have good evidence. It just is going to come down to with the murder charge. With the murder charge, we have to understand that murder has to be proven beyond reasonable doubt. And I believe that there is much reasonable doubt in this case when you take into account all of the competing factors. Like the prosecution has said, they want to focus on the 929. But what I want to focus on is the 929 and the 50,000 other pieces of evidence that may help us end at a sober-minded conclusion. When you take all of that into account, it might be, and I could easily see the jury not being brought to a point where they have no reasonable doubt. In other words, what I'm saying is I don't see a situation where the jury can convict Derek Chauvin without doubt. because I think in the beginning, at the forefront, there is so much doubt, there is so much confliction, there is so much competing factors as to why George Floyd died that ultimately, um, I don't think murder is going to be carried out. Murder is not going to be something that I see Derek Chauvin getting convicted of. But at the end of the day, I don't know the future. I'm just giving my opinion. So if I'm wrong and the jury sees otherwise, then you know what? I'll stand corrected. Um, and and this part right here, I want to talk about a little bit later on. But I they lost me. It confused me. I didn't get it. I want to hear more expert testimony about this. I want to hear expert commentary on this. Jerry Blackwell, the prosecutor, um, he said that the cardiopulmonary arrest didn't mean um, it basically didn't mean heart attack. It didn't mean that George Floyd died of a cardiopulmonary episode. All that it meant was that his heart stopped and his lungs stopped. Jerry Blackwell even made the assertion that, oh, this is how everybody dies, because all it simply means is your heart and lungs stopped. And when people reach their last moments, everybody's heart and lungs stop. Therefore, what's in the medical examiner's report is not really, it's not really a cause of death. So that part had me a little bit, pondering. I wonder how he's going to verify that. But with that said, I want to show you guys a video, because I thought this video was a good summation of of the uh of the defense team. I thought that Eric Nelson did a great job. I think he did a great job at showing why there is easily doubt when it comes to this case. I'm actually going to use it. All right, I want to share this with you guys. So this is a short clip, 5 minutes and 40 seconds, but it summarizes one of the points that I made earlier, that George Floyd popped speedballs before the cops came. So this from TMZ: defense tells jury George Floyd died from drug OD. All right, so with that said, if you're just jumping in, make sure you like, comment, share, subscribe, drop a comment. Let me know what you guys are thinking. Let me know what you guys are concerned about. And as I finish my points, we can go ahead and jump into comments. But with that said, I want to take some time and I want to watch a little bit of this video, because at the end of the day, what's said in the court and what's able to be proven in court is going to matter more than any commentary anybody has. So I want to hear it from the horse's mouth, per se, because this right here is Eric Nelson laying the foundation of the argument. So let's take a few minutes and listen to Eric Nelson, and I'll jump in and give some commentary, as I see fit.
You will learn that on May 25th, 2020, shortly after 7:00 p.m., Mr. Floyd and his friend Maurice Hall entered the Cup Foods located at 38th in Chicago. While they were there, they ran into their other friend, or Mr. Floyd's ex-girlfriend, Shawanda Hill, and he offered her a ride. You will hear from Chris Martin, who is the store clerk at Cup Foods. Mr. Martin observed Mr. Floyd. He watched his body language. He interacted with Mr. Floyd in this moment. And Mr. Martin formed the opinion that Mr. Floyd was under the influence of something. You will see the actual video from inside Cup Foods. Mr. Floyd did use a counterfeit $20 bill to purchase a pack of cigarettes. Mr. Martin realized this, and first, along with another one of his co-workers named Nabil Walter, went outside to the car where Mr. Floyd, Mr. Hall, and Ms. Hill were sitting. Mr. Martin asked Mr. Floyd to come in and either buy the cigarettes, exchange, or return the cigarettes. Then you will hear from Mr. Martin that Mr. Hall and Mr. Floyd refused. You will hear that a short time later, Mr. Martin went back to the car a second time. He went back to ask them again, please come inside, give us the money, or return the cigarettes. And that second time, again, Mr. Floyd refused. So at 8:01 p.m., a second clerk from the Cup Foods named Omar Camara called 911 to report Mr. Floyd. During that call, Mr. Camara, you will hear, described Mr. Floyd as drunk and that he could not control himself. He's not acting right. He's 6 to 6.5 feet tall. Accordingly, Minneapolis police officers Thomas Lane and Alexander King were dispatched to the scene and arrived at 8:08 p.m. During this trial, you will hear evidence of what happened in the Mercedes-Benz in the 20 to 30 minutes prior to the police arriving. You will hear from Mr. Floyd's friends, Shawanda Hill and Maurice Hall. This will include evidence that while they were in the car, Mr. Floyd consumed what were thought to be 2 Percocet pills. Mr. Floyd's friends will explain that Mr. Floyd fell asleep in the car and that they couldn't wake him up, that they kept trying to wake him up to get going, that they thought the police might be coming because now the store was coming out, and they kept trying to wake him up. And in fact, one of these friends called her daughter, Miss Hill, Shawanda Hill, called her daughter, Shakira Prince, to come and pick her up because they couldn't keep Mr. Floyd awake. You will see the officers struggle with Mr. Floyd to get him out of the Mercedes-Benz and handcuffed. And you will see and hear everything that these officers and Mr. Floyd say to each other. The evidence will show that when confronted by police, Mr. Floyd put drugs in his mouth in an effort to conceal them from the police.
So I want to pause right there because the story is straightforward in the beginning. The cops were called. Now, some people wanted to dispute this in the beginning, but now it looks like this is just a fact of the matter. George Floyd was passing fake money. He was passing fake money, and he had an opportunity to return what he had stolen. After it was made aware to him that he passed fake money, he had an opportunity to give the people back what was rightfully theirs. So we know moving forward that ultimately George Floyd was in the wrong in the beginning. And we've known that some people want to reject that, but remember, in the totality of the information, we have to take into account that all of this matters because it is one continuous situation where we have to judge the entirety, not just 9 minutes and 29 seconds. So with all of that said, we see that complication number 1 comes into play. George Floyd ingests hard drugs, opioids. A speedball is a combination between a depressant and a stimulant. So when you take a depressant and a stimulant at the same time while having heart problems that were underlying as arteriosclerosis, as George Floyd had, you can easily see how one could conclude that no, it was not just a knee to the neck, but it was actually the combination of drugs, of methamphetamine and fentanyl that ultimately ended George Floyd's life due to complications. So as we look at this story, I want you guys to just know, as a matter of fact, that the drug problem that George Floyd had, it wasn't like he took drugs yesterday and he still had it in his system. It's not like he took drugs 2 hours ago and had it in his system, even though that would still be bad. He would still be high as a kite. He took drugs 30 minutes before the police came, which is why he was acting erratic from the beginning. He was passing out in the car. He couldn't stay awake in the car. His friends were about to leave and get a ride because he was passed out in the car. Another thing that the defense team shows and claims that they're going to prove is that the officers were trying to get George Floyd to put his hands where they could see them, And because George Floyd didn't do that, that is when the gun was drawn. Now, that's contrary to the video that we've seen, where all we've seen is the cut up clip of the officer walking up to the car and then the gun being presented. All right. To my knowledge, I haven't seen any directions as they have said, to where they walked up to the car and then directed him to show his hands. He didn't, therefore they pulled the gun. But according to the defense team, that is exactly what happened. And now that more of the details are out, and we know that George Floyd recently took some hard drugs, it makes sense that he wasn't responding to the officer's commands, because he was doped up. He was high as a kite. So the cops are saying, put your hands where I could see him, but he's at the beginning of the height of his high. And his body doesn't know how to react because he is at the beginning of his doped up stage. So, like we just said, the defense in the Derek Chauvin murder trial began his opening statement by making it clear the key to his defense is that George Floyd allegedly died from drugs and not by the actions of his client. Attorney Eric Nelson told the jury the evidence, he says, is about more than 9 minutes and 29 seconds of the video, like we said before. He then zeroed in on Floyd going to a market shortly before the police confrontation. He says employees from the market observed Floyd and believed he was under the influence of something. Nelson then got into Floyd allegedly trying to pass a counterfeit $20 bill. Nelson says when the police got the call from someone inside the market, they said Floyd appeared to be drunk. Well, now we know that he wasn't drunk on alcohol. He was drunk on some serious drugs. He told the jury when Floyd was inside a car after leaving the market, he had fallen asleep, again suggesting he was under the influence. He says when Floyd was confronted by the cops, he put the drugs in his mouth to conceal them. He says when an autopsy was performed, they found a speedball in his system, which includes meth and fentanyl. Nelson says Floyd had incredible strength as he resisted 3 officers. Video shows the car rocking back and forth. Video shows the car rocking back and forth. There was such a fierce struggle. He noted Chauvin is 5'9", 140 pounds. Floyd, 6'3", 240. In short, he suggests the force Chauvin used was justified, obviously due to the stature. That is what they're trying to point out. He also says Floyd had heart issues that were fatally exacerbated by drug intake. So as you guys can see, the stage is being set. The stage is being set by the defense team, that at the end of the day, there's reasonable doubt. There is reasonable doubt. There is reasonable doubt. You are not a vicious, racist, heartless person if you doubt that it was Derek Chauvin that caused George Floyd to die. You can easily be a sober-minded, rational thinking human being and conclude that George Floyd died because of complications of drug use, speedball, fentanyl, meth, as well as underlying heart problems. So, the way that this is being framed as we walk through this trial is there's 2 sets of people. There are the people on the side of justice, and there are the people on the side of racism and racist white cops. But what I'm gonna confidently assert is you could be on both sides. You could be not on both sides, but you could be on the side of justice while not being on the side of vicious racist cops, because at the end of the day, it's not about just justice or just vicious racist cops. It's about the truth. And I think that as we walk through this, we're going to see that the truth is going to bear itself out, that there is good reason to doubt that Derek Chauvin caused the death of George Floyd. And remember, doubt is something that can't be there when talking about murder. 2nd-degree murder, 3rd-degree murder, you can't have any doubt. You have to be as confident as all confidence to say, yes, he killed so-and-so. And from everything that I've seen, everything that I've read, everything that I've listened to, if I was a juror and I was sitting there listening, I would have serious doubt to convict this man of murder. All right. So let's go ahead and look at some comments. Hello to everybody. Firearms and free speech. Hello. Whispering Wind. Hello. Hello. All right, thank you guys for dropping a comment. Let's go ahead and look at some of these comments. Firearms and free speech. Firearms and free speech says, I get that, but the officer definitely is responsible for his death. I have personally speedballed and done other types of opioids throughout my life in crazy astronomical doses. I never died. Now, the thing about that, firearms, is your last point. I never died. Now, you and George Floyd are two different people. When you have taken speedball, you were not in the same situation as him. You were not passing counterfeit bills. You were not in a position of resisting the cops. You were in a fundamentally, from what I can assume, you were in a fundamentally different position than George Floyd, because it's not like he popped some speedballs, went to the club, enjoyed himself, went home. No, he got into altercations with law enforcement, where he resisted, where then he started to have episodes of extreme anxiety and freaking out and claustrophobia. And of course, you know this, that all of those symptoms are because he was high as a kite. He was freaking out, not wanting to get into the cop car because he was high. If he was in a normal state of mind, I honestly believe he would still be alive, because he wouldn't have resisted the way he resisted. He wouldn't have collapsed to the floor. He wouldn't have jumped out the other side of the cop car if he was actually in his right mind. So yes, you never died, but at the same time, firearms, I want to ask you, if you did that, if you did the same thing that George Floyd did, do you think you would be alive? Do you think that you could pull this off? How many times do you think you could pull off passing a counterfeit $20 bill, and then the clerk coming out to ask you, hey, this is fake, I want my cigarettes back, you rejecting, them asking again, you rejecting, then the police come, and as the police are coming, you're popping speedball, getting high as a kite, passing out. Then the police come and they get you out the car and you're resisting for 10 minutes. Then they try to get you in the back of the cop car and you drop down saying you're claustrophobic and you can't breathe. You're saying you can't breathe before the knee is even on your neck. And then when you're in the back of the cop car, then you jump out the other side, like basically you face plant into the floor. And then that's when the officer, Chauvin, puts his knee on his neck. I mean, if you did that, how many times do you think you would do that before maybe your life was taken from you? So yes, it's true, you never died, but at the same time, this isn't about you and your experience. This is about Derek Chauvin's actions and George Floyd's actions. There are people that are trying to differentiate between the two and saying, oh, George Floyd isn't on trial. George Floyd is dead. This is Derek Chauvin's trial. Yes, this is Derek Chauvin's trial, but it's Derek Chauvin's trial in relationship to George Floyd. Therefore, we have to talk about George Floyd. Ben Crump is openly saying, Ben Crump, the attorney representing George Floyd, is openly saying, oh, they're character assassinating George Floyd by bringing up the opioids and this and that. Nobody wants to assassinate his character. What we want is to know the whole story. And if drugs and opioids are part of that story, then I want to know that before I make a conclusion. So Firearms and Free Speech continues to say, I also never had an officer on my neck either. I believe he was in the wrong passing the fake money. I believe he could have handled it differently, but they needed the neck definitely made, but the Nita's neck definitely made him die. All right. I'm glad. I just jumped down. I'm glad you're covering this though. You got a call-in line. I do not have a call-in line. I am such a newbie streamer that I'm just happy I got stuff rolling. I'm happy that my freaking Blue Yeti works and my front-facing laptop camera's working. because I have a Sony A5100, but my capture card, my HDMI capture card overheated the last time, and it's absolutely garbage. So I don't have that 1080p recording. So no, I don't have a call-in line, but maybe that's something I could develop as the time goes on. Whispering Wind, hi everyone, eating dinner, but I had to tune in. Much love, y'all. Yes, much love to you too. Make sure you drop a comment. What are you eating for dinner? What's on the menu over there in Colorado? Firearms of free speech. We agree to disagree, my friend. Yes, sir. Um, yeah, and I think that that's a good thing. I think that we should be able to agree to disagree, and at the end of the day, like the jury is going to be believe it or not, my commentary on this is it's not the authoritative conclusion. The jury is going to have authoritative conclusion, and if they conclude that Derek Chauvin is guilty of second or third degree murder, then I'm just gonna have to sit here and stand corrected. I could disagree, but I'm gonna have to stand corrected, because at the end of the day, I am not the authority figure in this. I am simply giving my opinion on what I believe. What's going to happen, and just giving my 2 cents about, what I believe about how George Floyd acted in a way that was counterintuitive of life. Uber to your mom's house. What's up, my dude? Better get ready, people in Minnesota, for them fires and break-ins again after this trial. God, you already know. Yeah, you already know that it's on this channel we covered the autonomous zone several times, and the autonomous zone is just a shame in and of itself. It's people that don't even live in Minneapolis, Minnesota, taking over Minneapolis, Minnesota. They are shutting down businesses. They are terrorizing the local people there. They're not even from the area, and they feel the need to set up an autonomous zone, a chop zone, and they think they're commemorating the life of George Floyd, but really they're not. All they're doing is aiding in domestic terrorism. If I was in Minnesota, I would bounce. I'm gone. Take my family. We're out, because this thing ain't lasting too long, especially if Derek Chauvin gets off on the murder charges. In my opinion, I think that even if he only gets manslaughter, the city is going to go through some riots, because people legitimately think that for justice to be achieved here, there has to be a conviction of murder. If there is no conviction of murder, then they're going to walk around saying injustice, systemic racism, burn it down, destroy it. Let's nuke the place, is basically what a lot of those left-wing extremists, let's be honest with who this is, left-wing extremists like Donald Trump tried to point out. The problem, Joe, the problem, America, is not racism or far-right groups. It's left-wing extremist groups that are willing to post up and take over cities. All right, so I really hope that Minneapolis, Minnesota can sidestep what's coming to them, because I mean, anybody with eyes can see this is not a good situation. Whispering Wind says it only takes that one time of a bad mix that it was killed. His bad choice did what it did. I don't want to say it because my last video got taken down for asserting something similar to that. Today's society is poor, me generation. And I feel you on that, because a lot of the times it is poor me. A lot of the time it is self-loathing. A lot of the time it is victim mentality. But when you think about it, like, it's up to us to make if you want something in life, you have to go get it. You have to overcome whatever obstacles are in your life. And then to say that, oh, these obstacles are systemic and it stems from racism and this and that, like, no, it's up to us. So yes, today's society is the poor me generation. If I make bad choices, it's somebody else's fault. The best example of that was the Baltimore mom. 0.13 GPA. It's not my son's fault. It's not my son's fault. It's the school's fault. So great comments, guys. I really appreciate the comments. Make sure you guys are sharing my content. If you guys could go to my other videos, my smaller videos, and just make sure you guys are sharing that content. Join the journey to 1,000 subs. Like, comment, share, subscribe, all that good stuff. Like I've said in the beginning, I have come from nothing to a little something. But at the end of the day, this is just about, I really feel like I want to speak for the side of truth. I don't care about the politically correct conclusion. At the end of the day, what I believe, the reason why I started this channel, one of the reasons was because I saw early that I sniffed it out that systemic racism is a conspiracy theory. The way that systemic racism is talked about by Black Lives Matter and the Democratic Party, I just knew it was a conspiracy theory. The whole idea of whiteness. All right. If you look at my live stream from yesterday, the whole thing about critical race theory, it is a conspiracy theory, which is why we're looking at this George Floyd, Derek Chauvin case, and we're asserting race into it so much. All right. So make sure you guys are just, sharing. Make sure you hit that like button if you already haven't. Yeah, racism had no play in this. Now, we can agree to disagree on that other part, but yes, on that, we agree. Racism, firearms, had nothing to do with this. Now, let me see. I watched this like 2 times today. So I want to be fair in my coverage of this because I believe, all right, let me see. Let me share this part because I think that the prosecution did a really good job here. I think the prosecution did a really good job on highlighting the fact that one could also conclude, that the policy of excessive force was trampled on. So I believe this clip of the opening statements in the trial of Derek Chauvin, the prosecutor, his name is Jerry Blackwell. I believe this captures it. And then I'm gonna rewind a little bit to show you guys his timeline chart, because I think this point that he's about to make and how he connects it to the timeline, I think it seriously does open up the juror's mind to really consider manslaughter. So I really think murder is off the table, but I think this right here could at least have manslaughter on the table. And like I said, we don't know. He could get off on all 3. I'm just saying, as I was sitting down and listening, this part struck me and I was like, okay, that is a good argument. So let's take some time and listen to Jerry Blackwell.
You're going to learn in this case quite a lot about the Minneapolis Police Department's use of force policy. What you're going to see and learn a lot about is what is the standard for applying force against individuals, the use of force policy. You learn that Minneapolis Police Department employees shall only use the amount of force that is objectively reasonable in light of the facts and circumstances. The force used shall be consistent with current Minneapolis Police Department training.
Now I want you guys to see what words he skipped, because he did a little wordplay there. He has a good point, but this is a polished lawyer. All right, this is a polished lawyer.
Is what is the standard for applying force against
what you guys are going to see is he reads this part. All right. So based on, he doesn't read that part, but reasonableness standard, sworn MPD employees shall only use the amount of force that is objectively reasonable in light of the facts and circumstances. Now, this is what he omits: circumstances known to that employee. And I believe that he omits that part, known to that employee, because there is no way that Chauvin could have known that George Floyd was having a heart problem during the incident. There's no way Derek Chauvin knew that the guy who he had on the ground was high as a kite. So he did omit that part, but still, with that part omitted, I still think it's a good point because you have to ask yourself, all right, was this objectively reasonable? And I'm going to go back and show you guys the timeline, because when he connects the timeline to this, I honestly, and you guys know where I'm at. You guys know where I'm at. I've done live streams about this before. I've done videos on this before. I have come out blazing. I mean, my YouTube, some of my videos have been taken down because I've asserted strong things about George Floyd. But his argument made me think. All right, it made me think, because I was like, man, it's possible. Oh, so I could easily see somebody concluding that Chauvin violated this policy. All right, so let's see if you guys could catch the omitting. I'm gonna replay it one more time.
See and learn a lot about is what is the standard for applying force against individuals, the use of force policy. You learn that Minneapolis Police Department employees shall only use the amount of force that is objectively reasonable in light of the facts and circumstances. The force used shall be consistent with current Minneapolis Police Department training.
So as you guys can see, he omits the known because, there's no way that Derek Chauvin could have known about the implications of George Floyd's heart, as well as the other things that were hindering his body's function, namely being the complications of being high as a kite on fentanyl and methamphetamine. So this chart right here, all right, really shows. So in this timeline, you have 4 minutes and 45 seconds. Let me see if I can zoom in so you guys could get a good view, a better view. Maybe let's see if that works. All right. So for 4 minutes and 45 seconds, Officer Chauvin kneeling on Mr. Floyd's neck and back. All right. So that's the time elapsed, 4 minutes 45. And this yellow split right here is his final words. So it goes on: George Floyd handcuffed on the ground. All right. Now, mind you, he threw himself on the ground. If you guys look, he's on this side of the cop car. He was on the other side of the cop car, but he jumped out that side. All right. So George Floyd handcuffed on the ground. George Floyd, my stomach hurts, my neck hurts, everything hurts. George Floyd's final words: I can't breathe. So that was at 4 minutes and 45 seconds of Chauvin on his neck. Now, mind you, he was saying he couldn't breathe well before the knee was on his neck. And we have gone over that in previous videos, that before he was even on the ground, he was saying he couldn't breathe. All right, which is why I believe he was having a cardiac arrest. So 4 minutes, 45 seconds, the knee is on his neck. And then at that time, once we cross that threshold, then we enter in a new time frame where George Floyd is limp. Officer Lane thinks he's passing out. It says right here, the first 53 seconds after George Floyd's final words, George Floyd is silent with sporadic movement. And that sporadic movement is involuntary movement. That is what the prosecutors said in their testimony. And then ultimately George Floyd silent and non-responsive. So the first 4 minutes and 45 seconds, George Floyd is responsive, and then 53 seconds plus 3 minutes and 51 seconds, which according to the prosecutor, for 4 minutes and 44 seconds, George Floyd was silent, and Chauvin still had the knee on his neck, which is why, just to be fair in my coverage of this, so you guys can consider holistically everything that's out there. If you take that timeline and you apply it to this policy, one could easily say, how is it objectively reasonable that once the man went limp, once the man was no longer moving, like he was literally not moving, he was silent, how is that objectively reasonable to keep your knee on him? So that's there. And I think because of that fact, because that policy is there, and because the video, shows what it shows, I think that the door is open for manslaughter. But that has to be proven. All right, so let's jump into some of these comments. Uber to your mom's house. I remember you talked about me opening up super chats and stuff. I tried doing that, and I have to be at 1,000 subscribers first. So I was rejected of that monetization piece on my YouTube channel. So if you guys want to support me, you guys could definitely go to Patreon. That is where I'm at right now. If you want to be a monthly supporter, and I've had people as low as $5, $4, $3, $2. I mean, it doesn't matter. Like, anything that you guys have on your heart to give that would be appreciated. One-time payments, PayPal, and also Cash App. So even though I'm not at that 1,000 subscribers and I can't receive what do you call it? I can't receive super chats at the end of the day. You know what? It's all good. No matter how it turns out. But with all that said, I just want you guys to see like the whole picture, and we not just be pigeonholed even after the facts get revealed, because everything prior to this situation, everything prior to the opening statements, a lot of it is really speculation. But now we're starting to see, to me, what jumped out the most, like that I was like, okay, that's big. I thought George Floyd probably got high like 2 hours before, 3 hours before. No, the man was doped up 30 minutes before the cops came. He took 2 speedballs. So that wasn't common knowledge before today. So when I listened to that, I was like, man, that's that's something to consider. So if you guys got any comments, questions, concerns, go ahead and drop that in the comment section. Make sure you guys are hitting that like button. Firearms and free speech. I'm going to start supporting you, bro. You'll get there. Keep going. I appreciate that, bro. I really do. And it's and honestly, it's not normal. I've actually had many disagreements with a channel that I follow. And the channel that I follow, he's a liberal commentator. I mean, the guy's liberal. But I like his personality, and I like consuming content from people that have an opposite perspective of me. It's called The Pascal Show. So I disagree with so many things he talks about. Like, I listen to what he's talking about, but I more listen to understand the other point. No, I actually like Tim Cast. I think Tim Cast over the months has been Tim Pool has gained my respect wholeheartedly, because he keeps it real. He's not pandering to anybody. He's giving his journalistic opinion, and at the end of the day, you're not going to agree with everything. You're not going to agree with everything someone says. So if you say several things that I don't agree with, that's not case for me, at least, to just tune you out. I think Tim Pool is immensely talented, and I think his message is definitely palatable. The one I was talking about, this guy he has a small channel, like 30K subscribers. But I just watch him just because of, just to round out. One, I like him. I like watching his content. And I like seeing people's different perspectives. But at the same time, you know what? We agree to disagree. So with that said, I want to show you guys a few more things about just so we can have a holistic view of of what happened today. I wanna bring up a person who testified. All right, so this is from the New York Times. So this is one of the witnesses. Now let me make sure that my screen is bigger, because I played you on the last one. I thought my screen was that big when we were going over when we were going over the policy, but it actually wasn't. So so the New York Post says witness at Derek Chauvin murder trial compared his knee to martial arts kill choke. All right, now mind you, this is all this is a witness called. He has taken an oath that everything he says is the truth, nothing but the truth, so help him God. So this is his take on what he experienced that day. A witness at the Minneapolis murder trial of Derek Chauvin compared the ex-cop's hold on George Floyd to a martial arts kill choke move on Monday and said he looked Chauvin dead in the eye during the fatal encounter. Donald Williams, 33, said during haunting testimony on the first day of the trial that he has been a competitive mixed martial arts fighter since 2003 and recognized a shimmy move on Chauvin on several occasions while the former cop pressed his knee to Floyd's neck. The knee was diagonal across the throat. The knee was diagonal across the throat. Williams, the third witness called by the state prosecutors in the case, testified in the Hennepin County District Court. The officer on top was shimmying to actually get the final choke in while he was on top, the kill choke. Williams told Minnesota Assistant Attorney General Matthew Frank during direct examination. He looked at me right there, he said of Chauvin. The only time he looked up was when I said it was a blood choke. We looked at each other dead in the eye. Williams, who is seen on viral videos of Floyd's police custody death repeatedly berating cops while Floyd was pinned down, said he had gone to the Cups Foods convenience store for a drink after a day of fishing with his son and happened to come upon the scene. He said he saw Floyd fade away like the bass he and his son caught earlier that day. When I first arrived on the scene, Mr. Floyd was vocalizing his sorriness, his pain, the distress he was going through. Williams testified the more that the knee was on his neck, the more you could see Floyd slowly fade away. Like the fish in that bag, you see his eyes slowly pale and roll to the back. Hennepin County Judge Peter Cahill at one point cautioned Williams about drawing conclusions from the evidence and simply answer the questions. All right, so as you guys can see, it gets real really quick. So yeah, I don't know how accurate that is. I mean, that's his testimony. Like that's what he said he saw, but that is why the judge was cautioning him like, hey, don't go too far. Like, tell us what you saw, answer the questions, but don't make any conclusions right here because you can't back none of that up. In a court of law, you are under oath. So if you're going to assert that somebody did this on purpose, if you're going to assert motives, then you better be able to back that up because you are in a court of law and you are, my friend, under penalty of perjury. So the judge was rightly telling him like, yo, calm down, be careful how far you want to conclude. Whispering Wind says you have to remember the media will only put their truth, and that's and unfortunately that is just where we're at with all this. That is where we're at. Speaking of the media, if you want to look at a liberal establishment where nothing but liberals go to talk about the woes of the world, I mean, just put in hashtag George Floyd. All right, hashtag George Floyd. And you guys will see all of this coming up. I mean, people coming out the woodworks saying everything that they got to say about why Derek Chauvin needs to be locked up. Let me back up a little bit. I zoomed in too far. All right, so if you have Twitter, I have a Twitter, but I barely use it. If I had a bigger platform, I would probably use it more because it's a good way to advertise. But I just stay on it just because I thought when I created my YouTube, I thought that's what everybody was supposed to do. Like, you're supposed to have a Twitter, another way to advertise. But anyways, Laura Coates said, we just learned during opening statements of Derek Chauvin trial, bystanders called the police on the police. All right. A police officer watching this on camera called the police on the police. All right. That's something that they said over and over and over, that the officers on the scene, they were so out of line that that bystanders called the police on them because they were so out of line. Ben Crump. Now you guys know Ben Crump. He represented he's representing George Floyd. He's representing what's his name? We just did a video on him, Jacob Blake. All right, so Ben Crump is well known. This murder case is not hard. What killed #George Floyd was an overdose of excessive force, asphyxiation from sustained pressure of a knee to his neck for 8 minutes and 46 seconds. Now, you know, this part to me, this part is alarming right here, because you are the head attorney on this case, and you're tweeting out different minutes than what your dudes are saying in court. So your dudes in court are saying 9:29, 9 minutes and 29 seconds. And then you're saying 8 minutes and 46. How is it not? How can't the same law firm come to the same number? Now, that might be arbitrary or not really that important, but I'm just curious, Ben Crump, why are you allowing your tweets to reflect something that's not even accurate in court? You know, just food for thought. I don't know if it's significant, but when I looked at that, I was like, man, it just doesn't make sense. Why there's two different numbers? Anyways, as we go down this liberal thread, if you're terrified of a man laying prone and face down, handcuffed on the pavement, you have no business carrying a badge, let alone being a police officer. Derek Chauvin's trial for the killing of #George Floyd begins today. Second degree, third degree murder, second degree manslaughter. Jury 9 of 15 are white. Oh no. You know what they mean? You know what they're hinting at. There's a small chance that white jurors are going to convict this beautiful white face. You know, it's all propaganda when it comes to race. The timeline is expected to take 4 weeks. The courthouse is surrounded because it's going to be a war zone no matter what. So anyways, this is just what you see out there. People think, people have their whole name set up. I can't breathe. #George Floyd. So that is the vibe of today's day and age right now, is people believe that, people believe that there was an injustice caused and that anything less than murder is going to be just another example of perpetuated racism. All right. So with that said, guys, I want to look at, well, we already looked at that. So I think I'm winding down my my presentation. I think I got everything out the way that I wanted to look at. For actually, last thing I want to show you guys is, because I forgot to show you this clip earlier, but the first 5 to 10 minutes of the prosecution's opening statements I thought were very solid, because he talks about a key thing that is going to be playing in the minds of the jurors, and that is that the jury has to incorporate common sense and reasonable application of the knowledge and the evidence. So with that said, I want you guys to take a listen to Eric Nelson's opening statement. We're not going to watch the whole 24. I think I'm going to stop it around 5 minutes. But either way, I think that his opening statements are very telling, and they are very concrete, because at the end of the day, like we've said over and over and over, to charge Derek Chauvin of murder, there has to be beyond a reasonable doubt. In other words, if you have any doubt that Derek Chauvin killed George Floyd, then we can't go with murder.
This is Eric Nelson,
Members of
the
the
defense
jury.
attorney for Derek Chauvin.
A reasonable doubt is a doubt that is based upon reason and common sense. At the end of this case, we're going to spend a lot of time talking about doubt. But for purposes of my remarks this morning, I want to talk about reason and common sense and how that applies to the evidence that you're about to see during the course of this trial. Reason is an idea that wholly permeates our law, our legal system, and it forms the foundation. And you will see and hear that repeatedly throughout the course of this trial. What would a reasonable police officer do? What is a reasonable use of force? What would a reasonable person do in his or her most important affairs? What is a reasonable doubt? As such, reason dictates and necessitates how the evidence must be looked at and analyzed in every single case. And common sense is exactly that. It's common sense. Common sense tells you that there are always two sides to a story. Common sense tells us that we need to examine the totality of the circumstances to determine the meaning of evidence and how it can be applied to the questions of reasonableness of actions and reactions. In other words, common sense is the application of sound judgment based upon a reasoned analysis. And that's what this case is ultimately about. It's about the evidence in this case. The evidence that you will see in this case during this trial. It is, I agree with counsel for the state, it is nothing more than that. There is no political or social cause in this courtroom. But the evidence is far greater than 9 minutes and 29 seconds. In this case, you will learn that the evidence has been collected broadly and expansively. The Minnesota Bureau of Criminal Apprehension employed nearly 50 case agents, analysts, and technicians to investigate this case. The Federal Bureau of Investigation included at least 28 additional agents in their investigation. These agents combined have engaged in an extensive and far-reaching investigation. They have interviewed over 50 members of the Minneapolis Police Department, including the officers who responded to the scene after Mr. Floyd was brought to the hospital. They interviewed members of the Minneapolis Police Department command staff. They interviewed officers who oversee training and policy-making decisions within the Minneapolis Police Department. They have interviewed nearly 200 civilian witnesses in this case. Some of these witnesses saw the entire incident, some who saw a portion of the incident, many who saw nothing, and some who had some piece of information to give to the officers, and others who had nothing. These agents interviewed the numerous medical personnel who attended to Mr. Floyd, and they interviewed the numerous firefighters and paramedics who responded. Agents executed approximately a dozen search warrants in this case to gather information. And in the end, you will hear a term throughout, I believe, this case called the Bates stamp number. The Bates stamp system is a way for lawyers to keep track of the case, to make sure that we are working from the same set of documents, the same set of evidence, to preserve the integrity of the investigation. You will learn that we are approaching 50,000 Bates stamped items. So this case is clearly more than about 9 minutes and 29 seconds.
So I think I'm gonna pause there because I think that statement right there really captures the essence of why we should not definitely, obviously, like Whispering Wind said, we cannot trust the media because they've already proven themselves to be phonies. They've already proven themselves to be biased. And it's one thing to be biased and to say you're biased up front and then do your reporting. Okay, at least you're honest with me. At least you're telling me where you're at. All right, but outlets like CNN claim to be objectively true, and yet they report how they report, which is very slanted a certain way. So with what Eric Nelson just said, last thing I'll say about this is he talked about the Bates stamps, and what he points out is that is a number that lawyers use to keep track of the case's documents and evidence so that they can refer to the same things. That it's really a system that is developed to ensure integrity, that both sides have access to the same evidence and they're looking at the same documents, and the holistic totality of the case is before both parties, and we don't have one side operating with this set of evidence and facts and the other side operating from a totally different set of facts that they don't know how it was figured out that they came to those conclusions. So the bait stamps really gives us a recognition that there are 50,000 pieces of information that could possibly go into the conclusion of whether Derek Chauvin is guilty or innocent. So I think I'm gonna leave that right there. We're at an hour 10, as you guys know. My beautiful wife doesn't like me to be on too late. If you guys, our son is in the womb, getting ready to come out, and so she has to go to bed at a decent time. Firearms and Free Speech says there is no integrity anymore. But let me say this, Firearms, there has to be integrity with us. Screw everybody else. Thank you, man. I appreciate it. Yes. Baby number 4, boy number 3. So, yes, to your original point, there is no integrity anymore. That is a fact. That is what it is. Integrity is a dying virtue. But something I like to tell myself and the people around me is it doesn't matter what's falling in the community. It doesn't matter what's failing or eroding with the culture. At the end of the day, it's about what we do. It's about how we walk. It's about how we conduct ourselves. It's about our choices. It's about us walking with integrity. It's about us telling the truth. It's about us keeping our head straight. It's about us not taking speedballs. I know that you said you have, but taking speedballs to the point to where you're losing control of your life. Which I would say it's a very slippery slope as soon as you start taking that. But I'm not here to be on Dr. Phil mode. I'm just saying it's up to us. It is up to us. So I'm gonna leave that right there. Thank you guys for joining the live chat. I think I'll do a live chat on Wednesday. Tomorrow I will not be on live chats because I've come to an agreement with my wife that Tuesdays and Thursdays I'm not going to do any YouTube. So Tuesdays and Thursdays. So you will definitely not see me on YouTube tomorrow. If I do post a video, it's because I woke up really early before work, recorded a video, and then submitted it. So if I don't do that, or if I don't do a vlog on the way to work on a topic that I feel like talking about, like something crazy like the highway that I drive on is systemically racist, because when I drive on the highway, I see a lot of white people using I-275 here in Tampa in the morning. Now that must mean that the highway is racist, because that's the logic that these woke social justice warriors use, is that when white people use it more, that's because it is a racist system. So let's see if maybe one day they'll carry that logic over to the highway, because when I drive, I see barely any black people. I see barely any Hispanic people. It's me and a whole crowd of white people driving to work, and I find no problem with it. But just saying, if I don't post a video under those circumstances, then you guys will not see me till Wednesday. But thank you guys, Whispering Wind. God bless you as well. Firearms, thanks for having it. I hit the bell, so I'll be there. And on Patreon, thank you, sir. Everybody else, God bless you all. You guys have a good night. Make the most out of your opportunities. I will see you good people on the next one.